Okay, so get this, right? Our deep dive today. It's a PDF, and it's nothing but the name Adolf Hitler repeated over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, pages and pages of it. No other words, no punctuation, nothing, just the name. So you have to wonder,
Yeah.
what's the point? What could someone possibly be trying to communicate?
It's definitely an unusual document,
Yeah.
and it raises a ton of questions right away. One possibility is that this is a form of protest art,
Okay.
just using repetition to make a statement or even to provoke a reaction.
Okay, so maybe it's like
Yeah.
like those artists who use really simple repetitive images
Right.
to get their message across.
Yeah.
But wouldn't a protest piece usually have some additional context? Like maybe a symbol or a date that helps you understand what they're protesting against.
That's a valid point. In this case, we're left with just the name and its historical baggage,
Yeah.
which definitely complicates things.
Right. Another angle to consider is whether this is actually intended as a form of digital disruption.
Digital disruption.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about how computers process information, right? A file like this, with its sheer volume of repetition,
Yeah.
it could be designed to overload systems or even cause software to crash. It's a bit like those denial of service attacks you hear about,
Uh-huh.
where hackers flood a server with requests
Right.
till it can't function anymore.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this PDF could be like a digital weapon.
Yeah.
That's a wild thought. But wouldn't that kind of attack be pretty obvious? It seems like someone would figure out what was happening pretty quickly.
You'd think so, right? But what if the goal wasn't to cause a massive disruption,
Yeah.
but rather to introduce subtle errors or glitches into a system?
Right.
Imagine a database where this file gets mixed in with other data.
Yeah.
It could lead to all sorts of unexpected problems down the line. Okay, now you're getting into some seriously sneaky territory.
Yeah.
But then there's also the whole idea of hidden messages, right? Like maybe this repetition is actually a code.
Exactly. There are all sorts of ways to hide information within seemingly meaningless data. One example is ASCII art,
Right.
where you use text characters to create images.
Right.
It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised what you can do with just letters and symbols.
Right. I've seen those, like those old school text-based pictures people used to make in emails and online forums. But this PDF, it just seems to alternate between Adolf Hitler and Hitler Adolf,
Yeah.
seemingly at random.
Yeah.
Is there a way to hide a message in something that simple?
There might be. There are much more complex encoding techniques that could be at play here. Imagine using the specific arrangement of the names,
Right.
or even the spaces between them to
Yeah.
represent different letters or numbers. It's a bit like a digital puzzle.
So we've got protest art, a digital weapon, a secret code. It's like we're looking for clues in a virtual escape room.
Yeah.
But where do we even begin to unravel this thing?
Well, let's think about how we might crack a code, right?
Yeah.
We usually need a key, something that tells us how to interpret the message.
Right.
In this case, the key might be hidden within the document itself, or it could be something completely external.
So like we might need some other piece of information to make sense of this PDF that makes this whole thing even more mysterious. But let's say for a moment that this isn't a code.
Yeah.
What if we're overthinking this whole thing? Maybe it's not about a message at all, but rather about the impact of the repetition itself.
You're onto something there. The sheer act of repeating a name, especially one as loaded as Adolf Hitler, it has a psychological effect on the reader. It's almost like a form of like psychological manipulation, forcing you to confront this name over and over again.
It's like that saying, if you say a word enough times, it loses its meaning. But in this case, I feel like the opposite might be true. The more you see that name, the heavier it feels.
Right.
Like it's taking up more and more space in your mind.
Exactly. Repetition can amplify the impact of something, especially something that carries a lot of emotional weight.
Yeah.
It's like those propaganda posters that used bold fonts and repeated slogans to drill their message into people's minds.
Right. But isn't there also a risk of desensitization? Like if you see something shocking enough times, you eventually become numb to it.
That's definitely a possibility. But it's also possible that the repetition creates a sense of unease or even anxiety, a feeling that something isn't quite right.
Right.
It's a bit like those horror movies that use subtle repeating sounds to build tension and suspense.
Okay, so we've got psychological manipulation, potential desensitization, and this creepy horror movie vibe. This PDF is turning into a real psychological thriller.
Yeah.
But it also reminds me of some of the art installations I've seen where they use repetition to create these immersive, almost hypnotic experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Repetition is a powerful tool in art.
Right.
And it can be used to evoke a wide range of emotions and responses. Think about minimalist sculptures that use repeated forms, or those paintings that consist of nothing but a single color or pattern.
Right.
They're not trying to tell a story, but rather to create an experience for the viewer.
Right. It's about the feeling you get from the artwork,
Yeah.
not necessarily about deciphering a specific message.
Right.
So maybe this PDF is more about the experience of encountering the name Adolf Hitler repeated so many times, rather than about some hidden meaning or agenda.
That's definitely a valid interpretation.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to the question of artistic intent.
Yeah.
Even if the creator of this PDF didn't have a specific message in mind, the choice of using that particular name
Right.
is undeniably significant.
It's like they're saying, you can't ignore this name. You can't escape its history. But if that's the case,
Yeah.
does that make this a successful piece of art? Or does the subject matter automatically make it problematic?
That's a tough question.
Yeah.
Art can be provocative, challenging, even disturbing.
Yeah.
But does it cross a line when it deals with a figure as controversial as Adolf Hitler?
Right.
There's no easy answer to that.
It feels like we're walking a tightrope here. On the one hand, we want to explore all the possible interpretations of this document.
Right.
On the other hand, we don't want to downplay the horrific reality of what that name represents.
Yeah, exactly. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's up to each individual to decide how they feel about this PDF and what they take away from it. But I think it's important to remember that even in its most abstract form, art has the power to spark conversation and force us to confront uncomfortable truths.
So we've talked about protest art, digital disruption, hidden codes, psychological manipulation, and even the artistic use of repetition.
Right.
It's amazing how many different angles there are to consider with this seemingly simple document. It really shows you how much can be packed into something as basic as a single repeated name.
It's almost like this PDF is acting as a sort of Rorschach test. What you see in it,
Right.
the meaning you derive from it.
Yeah.
It says as much about you, the viewer, as it does about the creator or the document itself.
That's a great point. It's not a straightforward message
Right.
being delivered here. It's more like a prompt, an invitation to think about language, history, and the power of even the simplest forms of expression. What stands out to you the most about this document?
I think what's most fascinating to me is how this document forces us to grapple with the weight of history. Even though it's just a name repeated over and over again, it's impossible to separate it from the context of the 20th century,
Right.
from the atrocities committed in the name of that very name.
Right. It's a stark reminder that words don't exist in a vacuum. They carry with them the weight of their history, the emotions they evoke,
Right.
and the power they can wield. It's a powerful reminder considering, how bombarded we are with information these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages, slogans, and headlines,
Right.
it's more important than ever to be critical thinkers, to question the words we see and hear, to consider their source, and to be aware of the potential impact they can have. This PDF, in a way, is a microcosm of that challenge.
It's like it's holding up a magnifying glass to language itself, showing us its potential for both good and evil. And ultimately, it leaves us with more questions than answers. What do you think the creator of this document would say if we could ask them about their intentions?
Honestly, I don't think there's a single answer to that question.
Yeah.
The beauty, or perhaps the unsettling nature of this piece,
Right.
is that it's open to so many different interpretations. Maybe the creator intended it as a provocation,
Right.
a commentary on the enduring legacy of hatred.
Hmm.
Or maybe it was simply an experiment, an exploration of the boundaries of language and art.
Maybe they didn't even have a specific intention in mind. Maybe they just wanted to see what would happen, to watch the ripple spread as people encountered this strange and unsettling document. Whatever the reason, they certainly got people talking and thinking.
And that in itself is a testament to the power of even the simplest forms of expression.
Right.
It's a reminder that even a single word, repeated enough times, can become a force to be reckoned with.
So if you're listening to this and you happen to stumble across this, Adolf-Hitler.pdf out there in the vast digital landscape, take a moment to really consider what it makes you think and feel. Does it make you angry, curious, uneasy? Let that reaction be a starting point for your own exploration of the power and complexity of language. Because in the end, that's what this deep dive has been all about.